for a little background, how long have you been doing this? What was your background before this? Yada, yada, yada. All those kind of...
So, brief story. Grew up in Ohio, moved to Washington State for school, studied
What part
photography
of
and
Ohio?
sociology. Cincinnati, and then lived in Columbus for a while.
Did we talk about that already?
No. Born and
grew
raised
up in Mount
Cincinnati
Vernon.
Bengals fan.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Mount Vernon for, I don't know, 5 or 6
way.
years. Yeah, and I was in
way.
Columbus for a job probably 5 to 7 years ago, and I went back to Mount Vernon. I haven't been back there in forever. It was so weird to drive through. Everything was smaller, and, you know, it's such a weird thing to go back when you haven't been back in a long time, but
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So sociology and photography you studied.
Yep. And I mean, I knew photography was a joy of mine for a long time. So
Is
I
it
kinda-
still a joy?
oh my, yes. Yeah, I can't envision doing anything else. And maybe we'll get into that later, but I just I can't, there's nothing that feels more right than being behind my camera. Being in the woods and behind my camera are the best things in the world to me. So
So you're like my son.
I
That's
see. I heard
nothing
you.
that he likes better.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I can't remember what his name is, but he knows where all the raccoons
Grayson?
are. He can see the.
Oh yeah,
Grayson.
Grayson Bell Photography. Everyone check him out on Instagram and buy his stuff. So. Just pimping out
Nice.
my son here.
you go.
All right, so this.
School for photography and sociology. Then after that, I got a job at the Art Institute of Chicago as a digital imaging technician. I was scanning in slides and photographing a few things, but mostly scanning in and documenting their holdings. And then after that, I left there in 2006 to hike the Appalachian Trail. And then I went to,
nice.
after the AT.
Did you do the whole thing?
Yeah. And that's another reason why Maine is such
Wow.
a wonderland to me, because you spend 6 months on the hiking toward Maine, and Maine is the
It's
goal.
like the
Maine
best
is
part.
It
Yeah.
is. It is.
It's
I don't
amazing.
understand southbounders. Northbounders have the or know what they're doing. It's ending in Maine is in October. Woo! There's nothing that better
yeah.
than a mountaintop in Maine in October. Oh, the sky,
wow.
the trees are on fire. It's amazing.
How long did it take you to do that?
189 days. 2000. My year was 2,174.6 miles.
Wow. Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Jeez. I have a friend who
So-
did that years ago.
I couldn't. It's the best. Besides having kids, man, it's been the best experience of my entire life. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, that checking out for that amount of time, I always say that it reminds you of, you get reintroduced to yourself before you became an adult almost. It's like you remember what it feels like to be able to feel and not be constantly like, you just get up and walk every day. It's just...
That's the thing. Like, you wake up and nowadays, well, in more normal life, quote unquote normal life, you wake up and you think, okay, it's Saturday, I should mow the lawn and I should go groceries. You've got 10 chores that immediately you think about when you wake up. On my third day there, I woke up and said, you know what? I have to walk that way. And that's it. That's what I have to do today. I have to walk that way, north.
Well, and not get murdered. There's a fair amount of murder on the Appalachian Trail, so don't know why,
well,
but...
When after the AT, it was so Art Institute of Chicago, then AT, and then I got a job at Yale, photographing their rare books and manuscripts at the Beinecke Library, and then that lasted for a short while, and I ended up getting a job at Harvard after that, doing the same thing, photographing books and manuscripts for them for a while, and after a while there, that job ended in 2010, and then I decided to start a business, as do this full time myself. So started out with weddings, but that didn't last too long, a couple of years, and then decided I had a buddy who said, "Hey, do you shoot architecture?" And I said, "Uh-huh."
Yeah.
So I did that, and that was 2011, and that was I as soon as I started doing that, that's where I knew I needed to be, because it's like one of the things for me is that.
What was it about architecture that drew you in and made you realize, like, as far as photography goes, this is what I do commercially?
I do products a little bit, but mostly it's especially shooting people, photographing people. Um, if someone blinks, if someone's picking their nose, and when you're standing up and uh, with the bridal party and someone's making a weird face or something, they screwed that photo up. But if
Yeah.
it's architecture, if it's a bad photo, it's on me because I
Right.
know
Right.
that if I messed up, if the photo's not good, it's because I did something wrong. So
Right.
immediately, I can't blame it on anybody else. It becomes I have to figure out how to do this better.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, and it's a calmer pace of I can get things exactly how I want them to. And
Mm.
again, like if that photo's still not good, then I got to learn from this and do it better next time. So that's what really resonated to me. And it's showing off an intimate place. I mean, and maybe it's just a kitchen to most people, but that's where this family spends their time. Like that's, and I want I want to make sure I represent this accurately and in its best light.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I love that. That's often what I tell people when man, this is what I did last time. I forgot to put my phone on airport and it messed everything up. It is on airport. I tell people, like, I have a friend who shoots medical commercial type stuff. And it's always, there's a lot of moving stuff with people. And he ends up kind of like documenting a tornado for the day, kind of like a wedding photographer, which is
Yeah.
really hard for me. Like you're saying, if something goes wrong, there's so much that's out of your control that becomes very difficult. But as an architectural photographer, you kind of play God for the day. And so everything that's messed up is your fault, and everything that's good beyond the design and the place being good, everything beyond that is also your fault. So it's it's interesting. Like when I go and shoot with someone who does a very different form of photography, like weddings or something like that, I know how not good at that I would be. But at the same time, what we do can be it's a very high, intense, intellectual, tedious grind to like, these two corners coming together, they create too much tension. We've got to undo that. So let's do that. Now that creates this. And there's always like that trickle down landslide effect of how just moving styling around in an image or anything else changes the whole thing. And so it's a
Right.
really difficult, subjective process that there's no right or wrong answer, just the subjective perception of all the people who can't do it, who will tell you if you did it right or wrong, which is such an odd, way to make a living and a way to prove yourself by or whatever we're doing. It's very, very odd. And I mean, I just came off of 1, 2, 3, 4 straight days of shooting, and my mind's just like mind and emotions are struggling to hang on. So it's good to not be in the driver's seat right now and to just be throwing out criticism on other people's work. So
Yeah, you've mentioned that a few times in your podcast, and I don't think people completely understand, and I didn't completely either. But after a day of shooting,
yeah,
it's taxing. I'm
yeah,
wiped out, and sometimes I just need a nap. There's a lot of thought
yeah,
and stress, and yeah,
yeah. It's kind of like a duck being exhausted after doing laps on a pond. Everyone else, he's just sitting there magically moving. Meanwhile, his little
yeah,
feet are going, and I get it. That's
yeah.
what it is. So you've been doing this as your single source of income since like 2011 ish.
I'm so, actually no. My son was born in 2012, and my daughter was born in 2014. So I've been a stay-at-home dad, with this being a side hustle when I could,
Mm-hmm.
when they were sleeping or whenever they're in school, that type of thing.
Oh,
But
wow, that's hard.
yeah, yeah.
That's a
So, but
lot of
as
work.
with this, it is, it is, and it's I'm taxed from being with the kids all day, and then I have a shoot, and that's even more taxing. So it's been hard to run the business
Yeah.
effectively. But now with this life change happening, the divorce happening, I'm at a point where I need to sink or swim, and I need to do this
Hmm.
full time, or I need to get a job at a
Okay, let's
find it.
not
I
get a
don't know.
job. let's not go there. You are smart enough, you're talented enough, you're determined enough. If you can make it through being a stay-at-home father, there's nothing you can't do. So
Thanks.
you'll be fine. Okay, so let's see. Do you want to start with just digging in on this image?
Yeah, let's dig in on this one. I've got a few other select ones. Maybe we'll do a couple exteriors, a couple interiors, and just kind of. Part of this is part of our conversation. I wanted it to be a critique of what I'm doing right or wrong photographically, and then a little bit more, and also a little bit of a dig in about the business and marketing and how you find clients. And I've had a few stable clients that I still shoot with that I've had for many years now. But it's attracting the new clients, and I'm having a bit of a crisis of existential crisis of is AI going to take over the world, or are people not valuing the image as much as they used to, such that they're willing to pay a real estate photographer to do good enough photos? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm trying to improve my skills as a photographer, but also understand the business a little bit better.
Okay, so
I was pretty happy with this
critique
photo,
of work,
so,
and then also currently working on business and trajectory of where you want to go and how to do that potentially. Okay.
Exactly.
Easy enough. We can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd say let's pick out probably, I mean, if we just looked at 10 images, we could go for like 4 hours. So I'll try, and I'm realizing from all the memes that are being fed to me that I probably have a severe amount of ADHD, which serves me well sometimes, but not all the time. So I'll try and stay focused on the images and critique these. Now, the other thing is, as I critique these, I know there's always a reason why you chose to do it this way. And out of frame, there's all these limitations. Now, to say you could have done a better job but didn't is not what I'm going to be saying. What I'm going to be saying is, ideally, what I would like to see happen here would be this. And then you'll probably end up saying, well, actually, right out of frame to the left was this large sculpture, and we couldn't put the camera there, stuff like that. I get it. I get it all the time. And it's why I often shoot images that I know no one's going to use as another composition, is to say, no, we looked at that, but this is what you saw when you were there, and it just didn't work. And then they're like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. But if I hadn't shot that, they might have a little bit left in their mind of like, Trent didn't quite get those things that we wanted him to get. But if you can have the evidence there to say, yeah, we did move over there, this is how it looked, that's why we didn't do it. So knowing I'll usually insist that there's someone on site from the client side of things that is approving images there on site as we shoot. Because if you don't have that, they're left with the idea of, there's an infinite amount of ways that you could have done this beautifully and perfectly, and the way that you did it, I'm imagining it could have been better. So and I'm not saying that to you, I'm saying what clients would think about me in their head and why I do some of the things that I do. So to have a representative on site gives that in the moment experience of someone to push back to say, yeah, no, I thought that too, but we tried it, it just didn't work. And they're like, oh, good, they're doing a good job. They're trying as hard as they can. So not to say you did or didn't have someone here or not, just saying I'm giving you excuses before I start critiquing you, I guess. So, the thing I would want to see in this image is, here's something that I always resort to that has a very, very loose philosophical explanation. The lower you can get, the more emotional your images will be. The higher the tripod gets, the more informational they'll be. So if you can shoot at like hip level, you're going to naturally imbue the composition with the familiarity of the vanishing point lines and everything else from when you were a child. And to me, that is what people are connecting to when you have that lower camera angle. every single time you have a lower camera angle, it has that more intimate feel, more welcoming you in. There's more of an emotional appeal to it. And my opinion, I have no scientific evidence, obviously, but my opinion is that those lowers images shot from a lower vantage have more emotion in them for some reason. I don't know why, but that's my excuse. So maybe that just will help it sit in your head. If you can go lower and it still looks good, absolutely do it. Now,
Excellent.
the thing I do see here at the height that you're at is that you do see the top of these pillars on the left, which is nice. Seeing the lamp and the stone on top and that little bit of pop, a different color there is kind of adding to the very colorful light and everything we have going on. I do like the place where I can think, oh, I want to go sit in one of those chairs and be in front of the fire. That's kind of where you're bringing me in to this image. That's the place I'm going to put myself in this image. Whenever I frame a composition, I either think about how someone will walk through the composition visually, or where you're inviting them to actually be or imagine themselves in the composition. Here, I imagine myself sitting at those two chairs in front of that fireplace. Now, everything that starts to add to the image after that, as far as not focusing directly on just those chairs and the fire, has to start adding more to this image and working to reinforce where you want the viewer to either pass through the image or plant themselves in the image. You've put a place here of where the viewer could plant themselves in the image, not as much where they could make their way through the image from the vantage point. Now, you could walk through from left to frame and over to the right, so you're not totally blocked. And even if you were like lower down behind a bunch of grass, you could make the argument that Trent, they can't get in here because they're in the grass, they can't get through, blah, blah, blah. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's subjective. I get it. So I would say, if in looking at this, at minimum, I would have done one image where I was much tighter in on the fireplace and chairs. I think that will be the most connecting, like, oh my goodness, I want to be in that space. Like, I'd crop much tighter in on those for one image, and then I'd have a wider image like this as well for either the landscape designer, the landscape installer, whoever was hiring you to do this. They have a wider picture and then a tighter picture. A real estate photographer would walk away from this just with that, and they'd say, that's everything you need. You don't need anything else. But to get in and get the kind of the sound of the sizzle of the steak and the smell, that's that tighter detail of where you'd place yourself in there. Now, another thing, to me, the image kind of falls off in the couch seating area on the left there. Like, from here, I have to kind of squint and try and understand what that L-shaped couch, I think, is over there. And that, to me, distracts from where I'm wanting to place myself underneath these beautiful clouds and in front of that fireplace. Secondly, the architecture of the home beyond is just, it's subdivision architecture. It's nothing great to look at. That fireplace, those chairs, that ring, much better. So I would have lowered the composition much more to see less of the house beyond, unless the house beyond is, why you're there shooting, because then there's a reason for that. But if you came lower, you'd get less house, more sky. You'd have more of an emotional feel of maybe looking through the plants to the place where you want to be. And I'd also think about coming around and shooting through those two pillars with lights to kind of add a foreground, subject or place, and then background. Background being more so like the trees and the sky, and maybe you'd shoot past the vinyl sided house beyond. Maybe not vinyl, but so I would have moved back a bit to spread those columns apart, so you had a visual line through there a bit. And again, I know I'm saying this without knowing the full situation and all the constraints and how long you had to take the image. So you have to kind of just take all the excuses and throw them away and know that if you're in a similar situation, maybe try it. But yeah, I would have had a little bit more space between those two columns, because they do add an element. And they could add like a really nice framing element on either side, and then maybe center up the that round circle, and then have the fire.
Yeah.
Now, I like the light that you have that's kind of coming out of the fire on the table and all that. It additionally draws you in there. I think my main thing would be that I would have come down more and cropped in considerably more.
Okay.
As far as post-production and color, the Thomas Kincaid direction, I only go this direction if there's not enough other things in what we're shooting that make it interesting. Because this is like, oh my goodness, the most beautiful thing ever, but it's not as much the thing you're shooting. So this is a weird thing in that if like dusk shots are kind of like cheating, right? If it's like being married, and when you're first married, like say in your 20s, you can have the lights on in the bedroom full blast, no one cares. Around 40 and 50 and 60, you want a dimmer. You just want a dimmer, you know? I'm not 20, you know, I get it.
Yeah.
So a dimmer allows for what is not in its prime to still look very prime. And for me, that, you know, that works well. So dusk shots are kind of the same thing. You have all this really incredible color and clouds and things distracting from, you know, the thing that is most important. So always keep that in mind. Like the dusk shot, it's kind of required. I get it. But it's also, it's like you're adding a lot of sugar to something to make it taste better, or making something really salty to make it taste better. So you have to have it, but if you're pushing it too much, for people that are in the higher echelons of pain in architecture, if you lean on that too heavy, too often, they start to back away from it, and they'll start to back away from your portfolio and you as a photographer. Okay. So use it sparingly. It also depends on your client too. If you see a client that's successful that you're about to shoot for, and they have a lot of these type of images that have, you know, very sunset moments and really intense colors and everything else, there's no reason not to give that to them if that's what they want. We are commercial artists, so they're paying the bills, great. If it's what you want to push towards more of and do more of in your portfolio, then continue to do it, great. I know for the clients that I work for that if I did that too much, that they'd start to get a little heavy on the sunsets, aren't you? You know, there's a weird thing in there that I don't quite know how to explain. So take that with a grain of salt.
Okay. No.
But yeah, to me, takeaway, you are at a fireplace like that. So, you know, it kind of begs for dusk. It's great. Yeah. But yeah, I would have gone tighter, lower, maybe over to the left more between those pillars, and avoid as much as the large blank vinyl portions or hardy plank, whatever that is, of the building. So you also have to think about including architecture in your portfolio that reflects the level of clientele that will have the budgets for you to pay your bills with. Right. So this, you know, it is more so on the side of developer that's put in a subdevelopment rather than an architect who's done a single beautiful work of art, right? It's okay. There's a different thing. It's kind of like the same thing as going from real estate photographer to architectural photographer. In the architectural photographer realm, you're going to have closer to real estate photographer is going to be doing architectural photography for developers, kind of. They're going to have a less stringent, a less opinionated, less refined sense of exactly what they want to see. And it's a bigger playing field where you can do more things, kind of like with weddings, where the people you're getting that are hiring you don't necessarily know exactly what they want. They just know that you have a camera and you've been shown able to do pretty good things, so do pretty good things for me. And they'll be happy. When you get into the higher echelon, they're going to be focusing in on selecting you because you do exactly what they like, and
Right.
they won't choose you unless it falls in line with their pre-existing aesthetic. So
Okay.
the higher paying clients will have a more restrained aesthetic that they'll allow, like in post-production and everything else. So real estate agents will say pump the saturation on the water that we see through the windows and bring the exposure down to looking just the same as the inside, which
Right.
is going to be like that really heavy-handed Thomas Kinkade kind of effect. That's going to be this weird, like, reality is not quite like this. Why are we, going this far? I get it. It's not reality,
Right.
but,
Yeah.
so I could
I hear
keep
you.
going on forever. So
No, I hear you. It's I try to avoid the HDR kind of look too. This client loves they do all this patio. They did all the patio work, so they want to show as much as possible. But they love doing dusk shots, and we had a great night that night. So yeah, there's
if
probably
you've got a
15 images from
client
that shoot
where
as well.
this is their jam and it's working well, there is no reason to change anything. So
Right. Yeah.
unless there's like a creative direction that you want to go, cover what they want, and then add in that little bit of like, I want to try this. And then you've provided everything that they want, and then you throw in that little extra surprise. They'll be happy about it.
Excellent.
Let's see if I can get this off. It's getting a little hot in here. Of course, lost both headphones. There we are. Okay. Can you hear me?
Let me find another. Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
Let me find
All right.
another exterior. I think I'll try to shoot for 2 exteriors and 2 interiors.
Okay.
Because like you said, I could talk about photography forever as well. So imagine that, 4 hours on four shots would be, yeah. Anyway, let me find another one real quick. Let me do an interior real quick, actually. I like those. Share this tab. I think. Where's that?
The cannabis stores are they're a source of income because they are attacking their overall perception. They're
Right.
preempting, like they're doing good architecture, which is
They are, and it's. I've been shooting a lot of them. Well, not a lot, but a decent amount. And they've been very enjoyable because everyone is different in its own way. Everyone kind of wants to create its own mood. So every store, every dispensary has its own feel, and it's fun to.
and most of the people are
see
pretty
different-
relaxed.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, and speaking of, I've been doing architecture for a long time, but I broke out into shooting a little bit more for the cannabis side of the world.
Oh, cool.
Recently, in the
Like
past
doing like
3
plant
years.
product.
Products, grow operations, that type of thing. And it started
Yep.
with dispensaries, and I said, this makes a lot of sense. I could do some more of this, and
Oh yeah.
it's been beneficial and enjoyable. But I'm a little concerned about the perception. I had a architect who I regularly work with, who was looking at my website in preparation for today's call with you, and she had said that it was just a little too, like she wonders about the perception of clients who might look at that and say, wait, this guy shoots weed, I don't want to work with him. So it's a little, I used to have the businesses separate and separate websites, but to make it easier, about 2 months ago I just made a new website with cannabis and architecture on the same site. I mean, you can click into different galleries, but it's hard. It's a hard decision because, I mean, the decision makers may be 50, 60 years old, and they grew up in the dare ages where everything, weed is terrible, but anyone under 30 is going to be okay with it. I don't think anyone under 30 is going to care, but they're not always the decision makers, are they? So it's a hard. I don't know. I mean, I have a particular affinity for cannabis and what it does for people, mental health and such, and pain relief. But I think a lot of people that don't understand will balk at working with me. I worry that people would balk at working with me because this guy just shoots weed. He probably smokes it too. I don't want to work with this degenerate. So
I wouldn't worry about
it's a
that
hard
too
call.
much, but I am in a state where it's completely legal, and
Yeah.
I know I've shot one, and the one we shot, like you'd have a hard time really knowing it was a dispensary. It was just really, really well done. You just look at it and you're like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. Oh, it's a dispensary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I've shot probably seven to 10 of them, and they've been, I mean,
yeah.
just dispensaries. Never mind the grow operations and the plant itself and the products and such. But
Yeah.
they're fun. It's a fun shoot always.
If
But
if I
luckily,
were you to jump in like forward to the business discussion, I would keep that as a line of income that you grow. Cause no pun intended, but to know that to get a unique business type that you're serving and you serve consistently and well that's a really good thing. And if it's something that you believe in, you're comfortable with, and you like feel that this is a positive thing, you've got all the things going for you. I think that will translate into what clients value in you. I wouldn't worry about that too much.
okay.
Now,
Yeah,
this one, Puma store.
yes, I was kind of pretty proud of landing this job. I was shoot for Puma offices here it's in Somerville, I think, actually, Massachusetts.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a fun
Really
shoot,
cool space.
and they're clients who knew what they wanted. I mean, it's nice to work with a team of folks who know what they want and are clear about what what direction to go to, what not necessarily the angles, because that's my choosing, but someone who you can collaborate with on site, who has a good idea what they want and can speak to that, not just say, I don't know, just
Oh yeah.
make pretty pictures.
Yeah, no,
So-
the worst shoots for me were the ones where I allowed clients to send me to a location and they said, just shoot whatever you would normally shoot. We love what you do, with no shot list. The reason that's so difficult is because then you arrive at what you're doing with an infinite shot list. There's something where you have to be very, very confident and skilled at cutting down a shot list and knowing what your client uses in selling what they do, or you have to just sit with this stress all day long thinking like, are we getting what they need? Are we getting what they need? And that's a really, really bad way to shoot. So having a client that works with you and helps inform what you should be shooting is massively important. I would advise, like, as you move forward in your career, to insist on that each time. Just make sure there's someone there on set, or be very clear as far as like, what's your shot list? We should aim at 4 images in a half day, 8 in a full day, and then we can probably get some additional details and everything as well on top of that. But yeah, to have someone there approving or disapproving, as we said before, very good. Now, this image, there are some post-production issues that I should address on it that your client, and this is going to make you probably lie awake at night, but your client might have picked up on and been unhappy about. And here's how you can solve it. Now, the light that's up overhead, how they have those really bright halos on them,
Yep.
you need to shoot a light underneath that right into the ground. Now, what kind of lighting do you use when you're shooting?
I don't.
All right, here's our problem. We got to start using lighting.
There's a problem.
You can, it'll slow you down, but it moves you up the scale for what you can do in post-production and then the clients you can get and what you charge. It is something that you do have to do. But the good thing is it's not that hard. It's really simple. So in this image here, the problem you have is you have a very blue, now trending towards green light coming through those shades and through those windows to the right, on the right of frame.
Yes.
That tone of wood that the clients probably took a lot of time to think about and choose that exact tone of wood is now, very yellow on one side and very green on the other. That does not translate well for them when they go to try and sell, hey, we can do great services for you. Yeah, but you installed a thing that's yellow on one side and green on the other, and that doesn't look nice. So The thing you can do here for the light up top, that big loss of contrast that you have in the light, you just have to get a big strobe. I use a white lightning, Paul C. Buff. Cheapest, but most Honda thing you can get. It's the only lights I've ever used my entire career. And they're only like $500 to $700. They're bomb proof. I've only ever replaced the actual tubes on them like once or twice. They're what you got to get. The pro photo and all that for an architecture photographer, not that valuable. Now, what is valuable is having that strobe battery powered, so you can have an assistant. Here's another thing: you should always work with an assistant. You have to add it into the cost. Find an assistant that's good, and get the assistant that is consistent that you use each time, hopefully. And have them drive to and back from jobs, and you do your emailing and your invoicing and your estimates on your way to and returning from jobs. That way, when you're home being dad, you get to excel at being dad and not constantly doing all this other work. And then also aim at eventually getting someone to do your post-production. But you can't do that until you're so busy that you can't do your post-production yourself. So you'll know when you get to that point. But for now, you need to buy a light, and you're going to have to start using it because you won't get further unless you do. So in this image, you need to shoot a light straight down in the light and the stand and the battery pack or the cord, whatever, can all be in frame. You want it in the lower right, just shooting down into that concrete floor. That concrete floor will bounce enough light back up into the ceiling, which will reduce that lack of contrast between that sharp, long edge of the bulb and the lighting fixture itself. Because now the lighting fixture that they chose, no one can see it, and it has this big, foggy halo around it. So you want that fixed, and it'll fix the other ones in there as well. The thing you have to do is you blast that light at full power into the ground. Make sure you're on a tripod. Make sure you always bracket it. You probably know that. But that light going back up into the ceiling will balance out the contrast between the side of the light and the part of the light that's actually shedding light out. And then in post, you have to kind of generally cut that out and then put it into this image and then blend the edges so it looks normal. Now, that part is more of the expertise of Tim. I can do a really bad job at it, but I know it needs to be done, and I can rough it in, but I haven't done it in probably 15 years. I just know that it's a thing that needs to be done. It's a thing that you'll have to learn how to do, and then once people start flooding your inbox for getting you to work for them, then you'll eventually get to a point where you hire someone who's an expert at it, and it's great. And we can also post-production your work for you eventually as well if you want. That is part of the business that we do as well, but I'm not trying to sell you something, so don't. But after you shoot that thing into the ground, it's going to fill in that ceiling so you won't have all that loss of contrast. And then flip the light around and shoot it into the ceiling. I would shoot it into the ceiling about where that woman's sitting at the table on the right. Again, leave the light in frame. Now, the reason you're putting it over there is you want to mimic the direction of the natural light coming in that's making that side of that platform green rather than yellow.
Right.
So the closer you put the light that you make on the ceiling to the window, it'll behave and send light in the same direction. Do you know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yes, totally.
Yeah, so that there'll be a massive big circle of light right above that woman, but because it's coming down at a controlled color temperature rather than coming through the window on a long exposure and blending with the incandescent light, which is much warmer, which is going to have a yellow tone to it. The sunlight's going to be blue. The natural or the incandescent's going to be yellow. Those together make green, which is what the side of the platform looks like. So if you put that flash up above the woman, you'll be able to then cut out just the platform area and bring that in, and it'll have a much more controlled highlight on it rather than this out of control kind of green reflective nature. And it'll bring in the details on the table. You won't have such a loss of contrast, and the edges around the window can be easier to bring in and all that too. And so I usually do that at about 4 places, 2 to 4 places in each image. If there's outside windows, letting kind of key light type of light come in. This ability to light and use it effectively in post-production is what's going to get a huge increase in the quality of your images, the ability to combine those two. So if I were you, what you want to do is you want to start out at least with one light. Depending on where your finances are at, get one light. When you can, get a backup in case it dies when you're shooting. You need to have a backup. But just use that one light and find a nice big window in your house or somewhere and get it where there's a lot of light coming in. Set up your composition and shoot it and recreate this situation where you have a lot of exterior light that's coming across pretty blue and then an interior light that's kind of yellow, and help it, make the image not look that great. It's going to be these blending of things. Bracket that, get the dark to light exposure, and then take the light and put it like right in front of the window and hit the ceiling. It only usually works, it works best when the ceiling's white, because then you're bouncing a consistent light color temperature. But if you have like a wood ceiling, you can change your white balance to tungsten. So the light reflecting off the ceiling is going to be far more warm then because of the wood effect. So you change that out. But just do it in your own home and play around with it. So it's that playing around and getting things to balance and shooting and then in post that's going to be the practice that you need for when it's important at work. So in this image, shoot one into the ground so you can bring in that light. Shoot one into the light and the ceiling so you can bring in the ground. And do that wherever there's high contrast light or contrast in color temperature light. That's very, very important. It's like next level kind of thing. Now in this, I can tell how much you've desaturated the top and the side of the image and everything there.
Yep.
And it's gone a little too far. We've done the same thing. We desaturate all the blending of the yellows and the blues, and we do that, and then the clients will be like, it looks a little fake. And so we've had to kind of take that emotional, we didn't please them enough. You know how that is. So we dial it back a bit, and when you dial it back a bit, it's like, oh, okay, now it looks more less post-produced, but it still looks great. You want it to be right on that line of believable but not overdone. So
I do have a couple Westcotts, the two FJ400s and two FJ200s, or FJ. I can't remember the smaller ones. Are you talking about would you use a softbox on these or a strip? Am I trying to mimic a reflection of that light into the floor to resemble like that long, skinny? Should I use a 2x4 box, or am I just trying to bring in exposure?
You're complicating it far too much. All I use is the light with a metal shield. That's it. Just the cone, right? And all you're doing is you're using the surface that you're bouncing the light off of as your softbox to fill in. Okay.
So we're just filling in here.
In this instance, in this instance, you'd want to, if you're trying to fill in the ceiling so the light looks correct, you'd want to back the light up, the strobe. You'd want to bring the strobe back enough so it's not hitting the yellow platform, because if it hits that, it's gonna push warm light up into the ceiling more so, as much as possible. Or if you have a sheet, put it over the yellow, and then you control your color temperature being neutral. We do that sometimes too. Like if a ceiling or the floor doesn't work, you just put a white sheet over it and it works. But yeah, you want that light to go up into the ceiling, fill that in. Just in general, you want the light coming out of the light source itself on the ceiling there. I scroll back my shutter speed so I just barely see the strip of light as properly exposed for the light, which is usually around 125 on the Fuji that I use, which is as fast as I can sync the strobe. So if you do that, you don't have all this loss of contrast between the light itself and the side of the light, because then the light that you shot into the ground pushes in and fills in the side of the light, and the bottom is already its own source of light. So then all of a sudden you have this balanced thing out. And it's just a gross general fill that you use whatever surface as a softbox. And however high up you put your light will determine how big that softbox is going to be. And then you're limited by how big that softbox will be by the height of your light or the other elements that start to come into that circle of light that you're creating on the ground or on the ceiling. If into that circle of light, a big maroon patch of floor comes in, that maroon light is going to do weird things. So just put a sheet over that, and then you have a nice softbox on the ground that's infilling the ceiling, so you can do the post-production much more easily. Same with over by the window. It is key that if you're trying to not have the reflection or the bad color temperature on the side of the platform where it's kind of green, you have to make sure you shoot the light into the ceiling right above the window. It mimics the same direction, so you keep a believable look to the shadows and the direction of light. But because it's in the ceiling, it starts to become much softer rather than quite so direct. And that soft but indirect yet direct kind of light adds a really, really pleasing aesthetic to the images that you'll be very happy with. And you just got to know, like, all right, the light's in, but I'm not using the part where the light is actually hitting the surface of anything. That's not why the light's in there. What I'm using, if I have the light over here in frame and it lights up all over here on a side of a frame, when it comes into my iPad, I block off one side of the iPad. I don't even look at it, where the light is and where the light's hitting. I don't look at it. I look at the side where the light then gently fills in, because that's the part that would be cut out in Photoshop and used. So I have my assistant just stand there with the light, either pointing down or pointing up. That's not the part of the image that's valuable to me. It's where the light goes to and then fills in over there. So I think I maybe chewed your ear off enough about that you have the concept. What do you think?
That makes sense. It totally makes sense. I'm surprised that you use a bare bulb, but you're only 100%. Focused on reflecting light. I used some strobes early on, but they made too many shadows. So I guess I was shooting into the frame.
Never directly put the light in. Never. Now, if you have to, bring the light in on the surface where you want it, but just cut the shadows out. You can do that too. So like if I have a light over here that's creating a little bit too much shadow, I'll just bring in the light where it hits the subject where I want it. But then the shadow that it casts, I'll use from another part, or I'll ask Tim to do that. So,
excellent. I need a Tim.
Yes, everyone could use Tim. He's amazing.
While I'm looking for another interior real quick, I want to touch on something you said earlier.
Before we move on, though. Wait.
Oh.
Before we move on, go back there. There's more criticism I have.
Oh, all right, sweet. I like criticism.
You're going to need a nice long walk and a hug after this, I'm sure.
Yeah, all right.
It's all right. This is for your betterment. Now, that beam whatever that is overhead, why didn't you square that up?
Because I like the edges. I like the wood on the left that had kind of balanced out the wood on the whole stairs, and I didn't want to kind of cut in any more on the right, because I wanted to see where that staircase ended. If I cut it anymore, I would have rather have made this a little bit more of a banner kind of image, where I could cut out some of the ceiling and some of the floor.
Right. That's more 16 by 9.
I tend to deliver 2 by 3 or 2 to 3 ratio than anything else. So I didn't. I don't like it, but I needed to have it to have the other elements that I appreciated.
One other thing. Watermarks on your images are a tell of don't do that.
Okay.
Don't want to put watermarks on your images. I did the same thing and was told the same thing, so I'm just passing it on.
Okay.
no one's going to, and if they do, they're not going to be able to make any money off of them, and it's not going to be anything to you. It makes you look petty and fearful. And the people that are paying you to do what you do, if someone else brought them these images, they wouldn't buy them, not because of the quality of the images, but because they don't buy images from people. They commission people to go do what they want you to do. Even if you brought exactly what they wanted, typically they feel like, no, we need to be in control of this, and we need to make sure we get the outcome that we want. And so they choose to use people they trust rather than buy what's in front of them that's perfect. With some people, it's a weird thing. So don't worry about the watermarks. The only reason you should ever worry about the watermarks is when you deliver contact sheets to your actual client. Don't ever deliver anything without watermarks that is not finished, because they'll get it, they'll put it into something, and it's bad. The only time I've ever been ripped off is when I took the watermarks off of an image on a contact sheet for a client, and then they took a bunch of them and used them that weren't retouched, and it was an issue. So, just saying, both there. Now, my inclination would, if I were shooting this, would to try and get that beam straight. And I asked you why you did it because you had good justification for why you didn't do it. So I don't have a lot of feedback there. You had reasons for why you did it. Now, the thing I would say is that because whenever you see a watch photographed, it's always like this. It's always at 10-10. And that's because a V makes victory. This looks defeated. Like when two arms are just kind of down, it looks defeated. When they're up, it looks like victory. So in this, you have, a strong line going this way, but then a strong line going that way, another one here, one there. I would have maybe emphasized the lines a little bit more even if we're not going to go straight. So if you're not perpendicular, make sure it all is going not perpendicular to a harmonious amount. And I think this would look even better, like you were saying, cropping that basically the entire watermark off the bottom makes that all of a sudden you read this line and that line a little bit more, and it just makes it a little more dynamic rather than dynamic in the top, 4/5, and then the bottom is just blank gray. So I
agree.
Do you use tilt shift lenses?
I don't. I tried it in the early on. I rented a couple. I just didn't. It bothered me how out of focus some. Like if I had to use them, It was because of an extreme issue. So I lost too much. The amount of lack of focus on the non-tilted, on not outside of that band, really drove me crazy. So I
never use the tilt. I never use that. It's always the shift.
Just a shift.
Yeah, because the reason I always find that the more things that you can put in there that give the viewer kind of things to anchor to, either like a vertical line, if it's off, that's like, okay, I have to, in my mind, do a little bit of math, aesthetic math, to figure out what these lines were doing if they're not straight, right? So to have things off, you need to have them skewed for a reason, and then accept that reason and really, dig in on that reason. And using a tilt shift lens allows you to square. I always start everything 1 point squared up every single time. And if it's beautiful and it makes sense, I don't try anything else. But if it's not beautiful and it's confusing, then I start to break off to the side a little more in this direction. And it's just that being squared up as much as possible tells you what to look at and gives you the most calm in trying to understand an image. So it's not to say that every time horizontals and verticals need to be exactly so, but with architecture, every time the verticals need to be vertical. The horizontals are good if they're horizontal, but it's not nearly like the verticals. But you've got the verticals, you know that. I would say after a strobe, a 24 tilt shift, a 50 tilt shift, and a 17. That's all I ever use. And on top of that, I have as far as shift, lenses go, and I just use the Canon ones. On top of that, I'll have the 110, the GFX Fuji lens, and then the 3264. And the 3264 covers quite a bit. And if it's not too exaggerated, I'll just, keystone it a bit and then correct it in post. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
But most of the time I try and shoot with the tilt shift lenses because they give you a better control of what you're actually going to be getting in the final image, rather than thinking it's like this or like that, and then you're going to correct it in post, and then you do the styling. So, yeah. And the other thing I would say with lifestyle here, the person you have walking down the step blends in a little too much with the existing mannequins, whereas if you had them down at the bottom, they'd fill in a little bit more of a blank or not boring, but blank area of the image. So if she was down towards the bottom of the step, I think that would look a little bit better. But you've spread the people out, and they're through there believably. I would say, okay. So to ADHD summarize, work towards perpendicular and vertical. If you're not doing perpendicular, make sure that it's for a reason, which, you had your reasons. So good. Get the lighting for top and bottom for both bringing in high contrast areas like the light or dealing with the color issues like the green on the platform. Don't desaturate whites to such a high degree. Right now, what you're doing, it looks like someone who's over whitening their teeth. That's the comparison. So you want to whiten just to that amount where like, oh, you must not drink coffee, right? Don't go too far. And then your lifestyle, try and put it in an area that fills in kind of the gap, if you will.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's
Excellent.
a really
Thanks.
beautiful space and a nice job. So that's good.
Thanks. Yeah, it was fun to shoot, definitely. I've got another.
Can you go to
entry
that
I wanna show you,
Puma,
which is fun.
the one with the Puma emblem and the green and the red tables, or?
This one, I like this one. It just felt simple. It feels a little bit off somehow, but I also liked how just simple it was. And
no, that's really cool. Now with this one, did you have any ability to get further back?
No, it's like
No. Okay.
I don't. Yeah, I'm almost sure I did not. But why?
So, well, anytime I can get back further, I try to. If I'm able to keep anywhere I'm able to get closer to like a 50 to 70 to 110 focal length, things are gonna look, especially like this where it's a little bit more of a flat thing, it's gonna look a little better in my opinion. I would have spread those tables out a little bit more. You have a huge border of red on the sides where I would have probably either shot the tables where they're at and then moved one out on each side, so you had 5 tables, or spread the 3 out so they're just a little more evenly spaced. I probably would have cropped in on either side so the green and the red and the bench run out of frame. That way you really isolate the elements of what they use to design that whole thing.
That makes sense. Yeah,
and then,
it does look stronger with a...
Yeah, and if you could have gotten back further, your focal length would have made the tables not be quite so trapezoid, right? They would have, started to come out here a little bit more rather than the tight. But that's a really cool image. If you crop in on the sides, and you also, you might want to try and in post center the Puma on the table to reinforce that. But yeah, crop the sides, maybe the top, and a little bit on the bottom, and center the Puma. And that's a really calm, very strong, like that's one that I would include in trying to land more potential clients of this caliber. This is good architecture. These are the kind of clients you want. Now, the other thing is here, you lost an opportunity with those chairs in the foreground look really flat. They don't have any highlight to shadow on the back. Those chairs, especially being white, if you can get light coming from the side. So if you had a strobe here and you blasted the right side of frame on the side where the guy's at and let that light fill across, at least for the chairs, you'd give them the rounded shape on each one. You'd have a highlight to shadow, highlight to shadow, and they would just pop out. And you'd have this amazing, like, ooh. And right now you can see that there's a light that's a little bit warmer color temperature coming down from the top that's making an unpleasant shadow on the bench and a little bit of a change in color temperature. So if you had had a strobe and shot it up, you'd have a really broad, instead of intense direct light source, you'd have a broad, soft fill that would make the bench and everything just look like there's a mist of beautiful light coming down. And then maybe you add in like 10% of the shaping of the chairs, then you're getting this whole just kind of symphony of light and composition, and put the Puma right in the middle. But even so, like crop in, move the Puma, you've got a good like landing page image, in my opinion.
Thanks. Sweet. What if it was a square? It feels like a square might be good in this case.
Square
with this existing image. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like shooting squares. Let's go back to
most clients don't.
One thing. Yeah. I mean, it seems like
I do
squares
too.
are typically social media, and they're not going to
social media. Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to talk about briefly is you said 4 to 8 images. You provide 4 to 8 images for four for a half day and 8 for a full day.
Yes, when we get on site, I'll tell them that, and then we get that. But then afterwards, I go around with the 110 as a detail lens, and I'll get a lot of just really quick details on aperture 2 to just kind of show materials, connections, joints, stair details, handrails, fabric choices, and for those images, compared to like the massive post-production cost that the image, the first, closer to the first one that we were talking about with the platform and all the people on it, all the images are the same cost to post-produce. So architectural clients appreciate saying, all right, I get it. It's $150 per image, but that goes for the really difficult dusk shot that you're producing for, the exterior, but it also goes for the doorknob, which Tim can do the doorknob in like 2 minutes, where the exterior might be 2 hours. They balance out. And the client has the ability to control costs. They know that you're not going to come back with a 10-hour bill for post-production, rather than saying, you want that? It's this cost. That's it. If I can't do it in that quick, I lose money on it. That's how it goes. So.
Okay. This is one of the ones, the last one I want to talk about, because we've talked about just images for.
What's that?
Can I say something we should talk about?
Tim has something we should talk about as well.
Just because you're going over the portfolio.
Oh, excellent.
Photograph. I just noticed that, Patrick, you photographed Derek Bloom, architect, that house we shot like 10 years ago. So you guys have shot the same project. Is that
one with the yellow island?
The yellow, it has the yellow metal staircase.
Yeah.
So you guys both photographed.
Oh, interesting.
So
we should look at that.
No way. Which one was that one?
You shot it 10 years ago, and I don't know how long you shot it, but
it was
I
Derek
shot that.
Bloom.
It has the yellow staircase.
Was it a shoot in
Residential.
It was a big old house not old, it was a newer house in Mass. It had a really big open yellow staircase.
Was it a really square house, like hidden in the trees?
Yes.
What's the name of that town? It's on the ocean, almost.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It was I thought it was in northern Mass somewhere, wood exterior. Big,
beautiful, like
independent
a gravel driveway,
kitchen island. Yeah.
Yes.
And a big open yellow staircase. I
should find that, because that's one of the ones that I hung on to for a long time. I really like shooting shooting that house. That's one of the clients that I never quite understood why we didn't work together again. So I was very curious about whether or not those photos just did it for him.
Well, I've never
or
worked with him
did,
again
maybe.
either. So
Yeah. You never know. Who knows?
never know.
That's too funny. That was a really fun shoot. I was really happy with those photos. Huh. That's too funny. Franklin? No, I can't remember the town. It'll come to me later after we hang up.
Yeah, of course.
Let me go back to that interior I was talking about a second ago. I just lost it again. I can't. Yeah, that's crazy. We shot the same house. I'd love to see your photo. Are your photos up online anywhere of that shot? Of that
I would
house?
imagine they're on our website because I just am delinquent at taking images down from my website. So I bet they're on there. And
Okay.
the images we got from it were pretty cool. I liked them. So
Yeah.
I would imagine.
That was
they're
one of
still
those,
there.
like we were talking about a minute ago. I like shooting squares, and that house really lended itself to at least the
Bunch of
exterior.
squares.
It looked, oh my gosh, all over the place. It's awesome. Sorry, let me find that exterior again. I just lost track of it. Shoot. There it is. This was, we've already talked about the flash, and I know that the stairs on the right were definitely an issue with the natural light coming in. I couldn't quite get that color right on the stairs, so yeah, with the flash, that would have done a lot better.
Yeah, the flash will help you keep your color consistency, your textures, all of that. So that's really important. And the best advice I could do is start playing with it.
Okay.
And through playing, you'll like, oh, I get it, but you have to engage playing first. So you're not,
Yeah.
on site like, I don't know how this works. But
Yeah.
is that Tony
Playing is an
Soprano on
important
the
part.
left?
I don't.
like
It
him.
looks like him, doesn't it? I'm pretty sure it
Yeah.
is, but I don't know. I never got the chance to ask the homeowner or the client.
There's conspiracy theories that he's actually still alive, that the mafia wanted him gone, so he just faked the whole thing. Who knows?
All right.
So the difficulty I have with this one is the ceiling. It's just a huge
It's
broad.
too much. Yeah.
Yeah, and the wall to the left of the stair feels like it's leaning to the left. Now it might just feel that way because the two stairs are, creating diagonal angles. It might be dead
Okay.
straight, but because of the stairs, it looks a little off. If I were approaching this, I probably would have squared up on the stairs and done like a 1 point in the center of the stairs, and then done a 1 point in the living room tighter. Because right
Okay.
now there's just a massive boring area in the top left, and
Yeah.
this image probably needs to be, if it's going to exist like this, needs to be very horizontal. But even so, we have the kind of the shelves and everything there on the left side of the wall that, you can't really read what's going on with the shelves. And to me, this definitely moves towards real estate, where the client's trying to say, hey, I want to show how these things relate. Just go wide, and show how it relates so I can sell it. It's
Okay.
if you're shooting for an architectural client, they're going to want to show more like details and the feel of the space. And right now, this feels like I don't know where to go. There's two very broad spaces pulling me either direction. So if I'm
Okay.
squared up on the stairs and I have a horizontal or a vertical image, all of a sudden you've got like, whoa, cool steps and lines and nice. And if you're squared up on the living room and you have those two windows at the end on either side, but they're kind of blurred out and you're focused more on that cool kind of, seating area, I think that probably would have been a much better way to approach showing the two. And if the client wanted to see the two in relation, I probably would have gone more over to the left and shot towards the stairs while showing just some of the living room so that they relate. Or the 1 point on the stair, I'd show a little bit of a bleed maybe into the living room and offer that as a condolence for the client to say, all right, if you want to show the two are related, let's do it this way. Or if you want to blah, blah, blah. But this
Okay.
is just a little too stretched between two compositionally. And then same issues with lighting and everything else that are very important to do. Like the steps, the back side of the steps on the upper right are very yellow and about what they should be. On the bottom left, they're like a total different color tone. So that's a major issue for some clients.
Okay.
The ones that'll pay more, it'll be a large issue with.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Do you want to talk a little bit more about business side of things now? We've had a lot of critique, and I don't want to be too much. I want to stop sharing.
Want to be able to sleep tonight, not beat yourself up too much, right? But those things of lighting are going to make a huge difference. Develop your own philosophy of what you want to see in an image and grade each image that you compose against that. Tell yourself, find what it is for you. But for me, it's always, all right, where's the viewer going to place themselves here? How are they going to pass through this? That, to me, it's a very voyeuristic, like people want to imagine themselves in there. Whenever I put lifestyle in, I'll try, not always, but I'll try to trend away from any faces being too identifiable, or I'll, generally use the back of a person rather than the front, because the front is a little more confrontational and kind of pushes you out of being able to place yourself in the image. And so I'll usually blur them out, have them walking between spaces or whatever. That'll help. But then the lighting and the composition, bringing it more into the tighter moments. I think from what we've looked at, you could start to try and shoot more tightly. And instead of having a full space, think about what can I take out of this space and still keep the feel of it. The major elements that are making this image good, just include half of each of those on the edges, and you'll find that it starts to create more of a visual cocoon of pleasantness, we could call it, that you get. There's something, maybe it's about more so engaging the imagination of the viewer that completes these things that you haven't put the whole expository thing in, right? So they have to imagine the rest of the couch from just seeing the arm. We can philosophize all we want, but I think doing things like that, the lighting, the composition, start pushing in that direction and see what it does to your work, see how you identify with it. And as you do those things, float them past me, and you'll get someone who's going to be brutally honest with you, who at least is shown to be able to make a living off of it. So
it's funny. I tend to shoot as wide as possible because I do want to show the flow of spaces between the two. But you're treating are you treating each room as an individual element when you shoot? My
first thought is how do I compose this to graphically make it feel right? And that's more so like blur out everything that you're looking at and reduce them to like interacting shapes. And if those shapes are working together well, the vanishing points and everything, it's kind of like I blur my eyes to compose at the beginning. Then once you get kind of the arrangement of things and where the tripod's going to be and all that, I'm also thinking at the same time, where's the light coming from? I never want the light coming from behind camera. Light from behind camera, in the same way where your tripod, as it goes up, it becomes more informational, what you're looking at. And as you go lower, it's more emotional. The same thing happens with the light. If the light is behind you, you'll get all the information in front of you, but it'll be flat. You won't have the shadows and the highlights. It'll just be lit, and it'll be flat. And you'll be able to accurately tell what's there, but you will have no story or ambiance or feeling in it. As soon as the light starts to move around in front of the camera, coming towards the camera, it becomes more complex, it's more difficult, it's harder to shoot, it's harder to post-produce, but it's far more beautiful. It'll have that light coming at you, and you'll have shadows and highlights. Generally, I like it from the side or about a 45. Seems about the best. Straight at camera is pretty intense. It's a little much. But usually my key light, the major source of light at a 45 coming at camera it's hard to go wrong with that. But then you do have to infill with your strobe and everything and balance it just enough to get it working right. So.
Okay. Awesome. Do you shoot, when you said you provide 4 to 8 images in a day, or for a half day or full day, do you tend to shoot 4 to 8 images, that's it? Or do you provide 40 or 20 and say, you pick your favorite 4? And cause that's what I'm doing. I'm maybe it's too much of a shotgun approach where I provide 40 images ish, for a half day, it's around 30, for a full day, it's 40, 50, something like that. And I say, here they all are. You know what you're looking for better than I do. Pick your favorite 5. I'll edit those for a half day. Pick your favorite 10.
That's
I'll
a
edit
very
those for a
bad
full day.
approach. I've done it myself, and that's why I can say that. Because what you've done is you've ran through the space and sprayed light capture everywhere, and you haven't paid attention to perfecting, or at least working towards perfection, on fewer images. And if you had done that, you'd have a few great images rather than a huge, like what you're doing right now is you're providing low quality but many options. It's like a buffet rather than, very expensive 5-course meal. You want to be the very expensive, is this enough on my plate for me to feel full after the night? And why did you sprinkle this weird thing on the side of the plate? What you're doing, you're creating beauty around what someone else has already created. And if you treat their creation as this amount of attention here is good enough, good enough, good enough, the end result will not be good enough. It'll be a broad spread. Your talent will be spread very thinly over multiple images, many images, rather than more of your talent and expertise focused on fewer images that are closer to what they exactly want. So you have to force your client into identifying the 8 in a full day or the 4 in a half day. Focus on those until you perfect them to your standard. Screw them. That they're not here taking photos. You are. Now, if you don't do your job well, they're screwed. So if you try and make them happy with many options, you're screwing them. You have to get them to tell you, all right, here's our most valuable 4 or 8 compositions, whatever it is that you decide you can reasonably do in a day, and then spend the time like, all right, is it up a little bit? Are these corner? You have to just go into that hyper, styling and massaging mode, and then the lifestyle, the bracketing, so to give you a really quick, like what I do when I have a composition, first of all, we look at the space, we find the place left to right, forward to back, where about the camera should be, that to me says the right thing about, putting someone in here and what I think I can do with this and move that in. So we have that, and then it's, all right, what height do we need it here? If we're up here, we see the handles on the drawers, but if we come down, we lose them, and there's this weird doubling of lines between the countertop and the counter beyond. All right, let's go a little higher. We lose a little bit of feeling, but that's the least of the evils that we have to deal with there. Okay. Then it goes into like, all right, where are the tins in the kitchen and the styling and the cabinets and the drink, and where do we place a cutting board and all this stuff? And then soft goods styling. And then to get all these things, it's just endless minutia of each thing that you kind of have to go through to get where you want it. Then after you get all those things, you have to bracket with I start bracketing with the lights off. You know what bracketing is, right?
Most definitely. I bracket all the time.
Okay, yeah. So I bracket with the lights off, and then I bracket with the lights completely on, and then I bracket with the lights completely on and all the shades drawn, if there's shades. What that does is that gives you the natural lighting condition that the designers have put into the space. So if a lighting designer is involved, you have a layer that can do exactly what they would want. And then you just cut in the windows from when the shades were up. If you don't have shades, you don't get to do that. If it's super important, you can just black them out with a black sheet. I go to Walmart, get a black sheet, you're set. And then a white sheet. So there's bracketing, lights on, lights off, bracket with shades. And then I'll put the shades up and I'll use a strobe in any area where there's going to be that high contrast issue of light coming through a window that creates a hot spot that's maybe not the color temperature I want or whatever. By using a strobe, you can bring the rest of the area up to blending with this high contrast area, or you can control the light with a strobe and blending it in. Through playing with it, you'll figure that out. I should put on a course where we go and like actually shoot a condition like this and go through each thing. I keep kicking myself for not doing that. ADHD, stay on track. Okay. So the let's see, all the bracketing and then lighting both up and down to get, the ceilings coming in. And when you shoot down, you do that. When you shoot up, you're getting everything else in there. You want to kind of have an idea of a central lighting source sometimes if you're shooting into the ceiling that lets the light kind of gently splay out and kind of creating a natural vignette even with how you're lighting. For each final image, we're probably doing like 30 or 40 base images that then get pulled from. I'm using a camera that has a really, really high dynamic range. I'm using the GFX 102. And Tim can almost do everything without strobes with that camera. It's so good, the dynamic range. What are you using?
Canon 6D Mark II for primarily. I use that with my 16 to 35 wide angle. And I use a 5R or R5, whatever it is, I tend to use that one for detail shots. I tend not to use that too much for architecture.
Are those both full frame?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And the R5 has pretty good dynamic range as well. Not quite as good as the Fuji, but still very, very manageable. So the R6 probably.
I'm happy with
similar.
that one, but I've had issues with that when I bracket. I set it on a timer, push the button, and give it a second, and then it does the bracketing. But I've had a hard time with it not quite. And I know there's auto align, but I know the frames tend to be just a little bit. If I do 3 exposures, they're just
Are you holding the camera while you do it?
No. I set it on a timer, tripod, push the button, and I hands off because I don't want to mess with that.
Do you have image stabilization on?
I don't, and there's another feature that you can turn off to prevent that. It still happened, and that's
now there is a Lightroom thing for lining them up, right?
Oh yeah, it's easy to fix, but because of that, I try to get as much as I can in the camera as accurate as possible. So I just send it back away, and plus the images, the file size is large, and most people don't need a 5 or an R5. Why can I not remember the model number? It's either 5R or R5, the mirrorless one.
I just always call them R5s.
So R5, there we go.
It's a tool.
I tend not to use that one because, exactly. I tend not to use that one because it's just the file sizes are 6D Mark II is good enough for that.
Yeah.
For the file sizes for what most people need.
The other thing is I use a iPad to shoot live view. That's really important.
Me too.
Especially for clients. Okay, good.
Exactly.
Do you use Cam
Here's
Ranger?
the photo. This is what's that?
Do you use Cam Ranger?
No, it's just the Camera Connect, the Canon app. I just use that to say, here's the photo. How does this look for you? It's been extremely invaluable. I've had that for 7 years or so. As soon as the 60 came out and it had built-in Wi-Fi, I got an iPad right away, and it's a game changer.
Yeah, it's a must-have for any architectural shoot. Really important for clients to see that. Excuse me. The Canon is the best with Wi-Fi, and I could actually, back when I used the Canon, I could use the Wi-Fi off the Canon to work professionally, but it's not good enough in the Fujis to do that. So unfortunately, I have to use Cam Ranger, and it's like a third thing in between the iPad and the camera, and so it goes down a lot, but it's what you have to do. The upgrade to Fuji for shooting is vastly worth it, but it is expensive for the camera, for the lenses, and for the storage that you need once you start shooting like that. So keep that as like another thing in line in the back of your head, that when you start getting more more and more work, and you're finding to upgrade, going to a really high dynamic range or medium format like the Fuji is really a good move. I've done it. I've gone from where you're at to this, and it's worth it on the other side. So
I had a Hasselblad for a while, which soon
nice.
soon I started calling the Hasselbad because it was overheating all the time, and it was like it became a huge issue to the point I had it
the
for
Fuji
a year,
is more
maybe 2
difficult
years.
to use than the Canon. It is
Okay.
a little more buggy, not as intuitive, but the files you get out of it are worth it.
Okay.
But it does cost more in emotions, in money, in patience, in all of that. It does cost more, but it is worth it. So
Okay. So how
So
do you attract
business
the clients?
questions.
Yeah, I was about to say, how do you attract the clients that only are happy with 4 images or 8 images or maybe 5 to 10 or something, what a less than 10 number of images for
Right.
a job? Like I've been trying to track the higher end clients, and I've been trying to track the people that value the image a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I've been meeting with. I don't feel like my day rates are too much for what I provide, and it seems that price has been an issue for most of the people I've talked to recently. I've done a lot of calling and emailing and reaching out to many people in the past few months to try to get this business, where it needs to be. And I just feel like price is a big issue when I start to say how much I'm charging for a full day, which was I'm at $2,500 for a full day and $1,250 for a half day. Maybe that's too much for my level. Probably it is compared to I don't know, but it seems like that's too much for people. So I'm trying to, and I'm happy to I think you had mentioned in one of the I've listened to many of your podcasts in the past few days. You had mentioned that you're willing to work with people on price if it's someone that you really want to work with and whose work you respect. And I'm totally on board with that. But so the other thing, and ADHD for me too, but I've talked to a lot of architects over the years. It's real, man. I got diagnosed like 2 years ago now, and I didn't realize it. Anyway, I've reached out to many architects, and where? I've reached out to many architects and just said, and I don't know, I don't even know how to do that right. I've just reached out and said, hey, I love your work. It's gorgeous. Do you have a photographer? If you don't have a photographer, let's talk. If you do, what do you like about them? What don't you like about them? So I can learn from this. So I want to attract people like you. So what do you look for in a photographer? What are your pain points with them, or have been with past photographers, whatever? And sometimes it's as simple as, well, my cousin does it and he's pretty good at it. So, we're going to keep it in the family. I can't ever crack, I can't get into that ever. So how do I attract the right people? Is it by reaching out directly or by networking? I'm at a loss. Like, I want to shoot cool stuff and I feel like I've got a good skill at what I do. So what am I doing wrong?
So the things I pointed out earlier are issues that as you correct those, you'll have that further refined thing that'll get past their judgment. So as you start to lose those bad color interactions between incandescent and natural light, turning yellow things green and stuff like that, that'll be one subtle tick that they couldn't identify before, but it's something that they see and they feel, but they cannot articulate. So this is the same thing why people who don't know what they're doing can shoot weddings, because the people hiring them don't know what they're looking for, don't have the talent to know good from bad to begin with, or cannot articulate it. But your client is less informed when you start out in weddings. They just know they need good pictures, and So the people you're approaching right now that aren't willing to pay your fees are not using you for potentially the post-production issues as far as the coloring. and the lighting issues. Those, and they wouldn't be able to say this. This is my guesstimation for their subjective experience of looking at your portfolio. There's going to be little things that stick out, and that color issue of getting consistent color is one. Another one is if you do things too far, like whitening your teeth too much, like taking all the color out of there. Don't do that.
Okay.
And then composition and getting, it's a huge marker that goes from real estate photographer to architectural photographer, that the architectural photographer more often goes with a tighter focal length. Real estate, more expository. So you have to start understanding how to crop in and still have something that is appealing to you. So you have to figure out how to tighten your compositions, layer them. So you're going to want something in the foreground, like the arm of a chair, arm of a couch, something in the middle ground, like the coffee table or something else, and then something where you're pulling the person. You have to really, if I were you, I'd buy a few like of your favorite architectural photographer books, or, you know, look through my website or anyone else's that you really appreciate, and find the stuff that you really like. Ooh, that one gives me goosebumps. Print it out and study that thing, and then go find a way to replicate it. That process of playing and replicating the things that you want to do gets you into that. It's just like, keep doing it, and then you'll learn how to do it. But then once you know how to do it, your abilities start to manipulate it towards your unique vision. So if you spend all this time copying someone to get the look that you like and you want, that is very, very valuable time. Just know that you're copying something else, and that you then, once you have that tool, it's just a tool. That's a baseline to say, all right, I can do that. That's behind me. Now that I know I meet this baseline, here's where I start to create, you know? So cover the boundaries that other people have already shown you how to do what you think is good. Learn how to do that. Then that's when you start adding in, well, I change and do it differently because of this. That way you'll have learned the rules essentially, and you'll be breaking them intentionally rather than accidentally. Okay. And when you break a rule intentionally, you can do great things with it, but you have to know that you're breaking it, and you have to be careful in breaking it to create that thing that really sings at that point. And you're only really going to understand everything that I just said by going through the process if you're like me. Once I've embodied it or done it, I can go much further with it than someone who could have learned how to do it much more quickly. Because the person that learns how to do it very quickly is just that much more likely to just rubber stamp that thing over and over and over and not really know how that thing works and how to manipulate it to further use it. So they'll be limited by it. So the complexity and the difficulty that you're running into now is as it should be. If you're a true creative that's good at what they do and everything else and has that ability, it's not going to come completely easy. It's going to be something that you embody over time. And when you've weathered, those storms over time and time again, like I'm at the point where like I don't need any prep for any job I've ever done or do now, because I've done it so much. I know how to do it. It's in the moment now that I get to more so expand upon what we do rather than have to worry about being prepared. So I'm finding like a next gear in my career currently. And actually a lot of what's informing that is me actually wandering around and shooting more stuff that has nothing to do with architecture. I'm starting to repetitiously see how bad I am at photography when I'm not doing something that I already know how to do. But it's in those little successes, like the whole part of this image fails, but something happened really nice right here. And I can't even like pull that out right now, but I can see in the consistency of what I'm shooting an improvement. So I know that in the playing and in the continuing to enjoy and do this, it feeds what I'm doing professionally, and it forms that, just that I'm improving in this other way that then applies back. So
Nice.
when you're looking for those clients, these are the things that you have to work on that's in your portfolio. That image you have straight on of that Puma shot, that should be like a landing page in your portfolio. That's a great client. It's great color. You know, that you missed a few things on there that could have made it better, but it's a really great image and a really beautiful place. That's one of the images you should have in your major portfolio, in my opinion. I saw a few others while scrolling through there that looked really interesting as well. I'd be careful with too much saturation. Think of it as adding sugar to something. If there's too much, it's not going to be good. It's going to ruin it. Too much salt, not good. It's going to ruin it. It has to be just right. Now, to get the people's attention that have budgets that are, you know, 2,500 and up, you have to have that portfolio cleaned up with those color contrasts and everything else, the high contrast areas. After that, it's the composition work of showing that presence of, you know, foreground, middle ground, where the person places themselves in the image. You have to see that consistently in what you show in your portfolio. Be really stringent with what you leave in your website. Only put things in there that you would like to shoot again. Like you liked the project enough that, not that you'd necessarily want to shoot it twice, but you know what I mean? That like, this is great. I'd like more work like this. So anything with a vinyl subdivision, you're going to be limited to people that have vinyl subdivision budgets. And you're going to be sub 2,500 with those kind of projects. Now, the worst project I've ever shot that made me feel the worst about myself, that I was using my talents to do something so ugly, was only like 3 years ago. And I did that because I didn't have anything going on that day and they were willing to pay my fee. So I did it. It's not that every single project and every single client is a portfolio client. You got to pay the bills, you know? So any work that comes your way that's worth your time, do it. If it's great, put it on your portfolio. If not, take the money and run. It's you know, we're not strictly artists here, but the more you can gravitate towards being an artist as you progress, the better. So keep that in mind. Now, getting attention of these kind of clients, they'll function a lot more like gatekeepers. They'll also, in that, they'll have they're professional opinion people. They will visually look at something, they will harshly judge it, and they want to know that your passion and, you know, desire to get as close as possible to perfection is what you bring to the table every time when you focus on something that they've bled over. Being an architect is about the worst way to make a living. It is so hard because there's so much money, so many opinions, so much difficulty, so many personalities. It's rough. And so to be lucky enough to be the guy that comes in when everything looks pretty and you're just wrapping up, it's, you know, I feel that there might be a real disdain for architectural photographers in the architectural world, just in the fact that they only get to involve themselves in the pretty part, you know? I would get the resentment. I totally get it. But hey, why didn't you do it, you know? So someone's got to do it. And I figured out how to do it somehow. And I do my best every time. You have to swing for the fence. Now, to get their attention, let's see if I can figure that out. I used to go, you know, with a large printed portfolio because architects respect that. Someone went through the issues of having to get something on paper and put it in a beautiful book that was well presented. And I, you know, could sit there and talk about the images we got and why and everything else. I hated doing that more than anything else. It's not what I do well. I did not enjoy doing it, and I don't really do it anymore. But I had to do it when I was doing it. So unfortunately for you, you might want to get a really nice print book together and figure out just how to get through the door. Get in there and not be annoying, obviously. You want people to be inspired by being around you and to find you interesting, to find you enlightening, to find you pleasant. So you have to work all that out, which I'm not great at being any of those. I can, there's a degree of shock factor that is humorous with me that is my best quality. So not great. But something printed out with your best work, your best foot forward is going to be extremely valuable. Emailing, cold calls, I don't think are the best way about going. When I started out, I set like a perimeter. My local town in Biddeford, I identified all the architectural offices and I got them on a mailing list. I sent them all an email to ask if I could come by and show my portfolio. Quite a few of them said yes. It's a small town, and and as I saturated the town, then I said, okay, now I'm going to move out to trying to meet with every single architect I can in Portland. And so then, I get known amongst them. And eventually what happens is they throw you a bone. They'll throw you kind of a throwaway project. And, if you can make a bad project look good, you make a very, very happy client. So all the opportunities you get are going to be on, fairly low projects. And if you can make low-end projects look like higher-end projects, you are invaluable. You've just multiplied their potential income simply by your talents. So know that. Every opportunity you get is a chance to make, whatever this thing is look better than it actually is. I always found difficult situations more interesting than easy ones. When you get to the easy ones, it's fun and it's a breeze, but the difficult ones require more talent. So if you can show that you have the talent to make the difficult ones look good, then you get the opportunity to move to the easier ones. So there'll be a level of gatekeeperness with any higher end firm. They want to see that portfolio usually. The other thing is, I'm on the far side of 40, and
me too.
The way that people get known today is different than from when I was doing it. So Instagram, Reels, and all that, I would imagine are going to play a fairly strong amount. When I first got onto Instagram, it was like, do you sure you want to put your professional thing out there on something like Instagram? Right. Architects weren't on it, and I was just playing around with it. But then it got to like Instagram's almost your portfolio in a sense. And so you have to have a really strong social media presence, and you have to try and meet in person. I was not great at meeting in person. I did it. Wasn't great at it. I came up with the idea for the podcast to really push up against that because I didn't enjoy going to networking things. So I figured if I could create something of value for the local community as far as the local architecture publication we have here in Maine, that if I could get them to pay me to do a podcast with, potential clients, is how I looked at it, that everyone was benefiting. So instead of me having to go to a networking thing, I got people to come to me to sit down with me and have a podcast about them. And that's fine. We're advertising them, to their potential clients, which has worked well. I think I've, after doing this for how many ever years I've done the podcast, I finally got one job that came directly from the podcast, which was a good job and a good client out in California. And, other than that, it's still a great networking tool and a great way to get your name out there regardless. So if you can go on podcasts like this or anything else, obviously that would be good. Any service or value that you can offer to potential clients is a way of getting your foot in the door as well. Right now, you're thinking about it primarily as like, is my work good enough to get in front of the people that will pay, blah, blah, blah. I'm giving you the suggestions that are going to push your work towards that. Once you show that you can use lights and manage that and work into, you want to get to a place where you understand that the compositions that you're generating other people start to see that, oh, Patrick did that, you know, there's something there that starts to become you, that's consistent, that is seen in it. So I have a lot of people who tell me like, oh, I saw that and I knew it was yours immediately. And I don't know how they do that, but I can see other people's work and I say, oh, I know who did that. And I couldn't exactly say like, well, I know it's them because it's just the overall impression tells me, oh, I know that work and I know who did that work. In the same way, when people look at your portfolio, they're taking in your work and they're saying, green light. I don't like green light on interiors. It's a mix of these. And they map that as you. So you have to be careful with all the things you put in there and how you do it. So getting in front of those clients, I, like every spring, would identify like 5 or 6 clients in Boston that I'd want to go and meet with and take the portfolio and go and do that. I think that's primarily how I got to a level of clients that I basically saturated the clients, potential clients in Boston and Portland at the time that I was starting out, enough to all of them knew my name. And if they wanted to use me, they knew how to get a hold of me. And I got enough work to where I was busy enough to where I couldn't take more. So I could start working harder, marketing more and doing all that, or I can not be quite so greedy and just use some of my own time as, hey, it's nice to be alive and enjoy it. So when I look at making more money or having more time, I usually choose more time. So
Makes sense.
it's a good way to gauge success. I have far more time than a lot of people, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah. What are the job titles of the people you tend to work with? Is it architects, marketing managers? What is it?
Marketing, architect, kind of either the head of the whole thing, or they'll have a marketing person.
Okay.
When they have a marketing person, it's generally a little more, I don't want to say more professional relationship, but there's less emotion involved with the person hiring you. There's less emotional connection to the money going to you. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Like if an owner of a business is hiring you, they feel the emotions when they lose the money.
Right.
When an employee spends money, there's not the thing. Now, it's valuable to have people in positions where they can spend your money without the emotional attachment. That's when people have hired people who know what to do and are brave enough to do it. You know, they like, no, we got to do right marketing. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to do that. The owner might more likely, unless they're very, aware of their own emotions and put them in the right place, they're going to be much more like, well, we can pinch here, we can pinch here, we can pinch here, and we can do that because, that's, So it becomes a little more tense when you're dealing with the actual owner of the company. And you have to be able to feel those situations out, make them comfortable. It's a weird thing. Like when I try and access how I would recommend socially handling the interactions with clients, I'm staring into a black void. I'm doing all that off of like in the moment instinct of just trying to keep people happy and make them laugh a little bit. That part of me has all been accidental. So I don't have a lot of advice about how to conduct yourself other than saying like, be professional, be on time, understand that how you present yourself is very important. This is usually how I present myself, but it also comes along with a personality that justifies it. So there's a weird thing there. You got the big beard. It's a little unprofessional, and architects will look at that and say, well, it's okay as an artist. That it is totally acceptable. There needs to be a bit of he's got a big beard and he wears these weird socks and it's kind of fun for the day. We all get to be a little irresponsible, but he's very passionate about what he does because he's an artist. And there's something weird there that when you're hiring a photographer, you can be a little outlandish and not in a suit and tie and people are okay with it. And there's also a little bit of a, I don't want to say panache or whatever, but the fact that you've gotten to a point where you don't have to have the neatly trimmed beard and show up at work at 9 and make sure you're in your cubicle. Like, oh, this one's a little more feral. He was able to do something where he's not in a cage every day. I like that. There's something there,
Right.
So know that that's there and manage it. It has to be within those bounds, but it's also, I don't want to say a flex, but it's a bit of a flex. They're like, look, I'm self-employed and I get to dress how I choose, and this is how I choose, and it's something there. But what else? Finding the best thing I did was find ways where I can create something that's a desired benefit for my client, to pull like multiple things in that multiple people benefit. So one of the things I did was I sought, when I was, at a position where architects didn't know my name and no one was willing to pay my price or any price, I knew that I could go to builders and pitch them on using me for free, to then pitch the sale of those images to the architects. The architects don't know me, and they know that the publications don't know me, so they don't care. If you approach a builder, they're far more pragmatic, practical. They'll say, you'll do this for free, and I get to have them and use them in my marketing? I'll get you access, sure. Typically, by the end of a job, the architect is not in good standing with the client, because they've tried to get the client to spend more money to create the vision that the architect worked so hard on, while the builder had the ear of the client saying, we can do this for cheaper. We can do this way. And we can do this that way. We can do it this way. You don't have to spend so much money. So at the end of it, a lot of times the builder and the client will be a little closer than the client and the architect. Not always, obviously, but sometimes. So you can use that relationship that the builder has with the client to say, hey, if you get me access to that, I'll photograph it as an architectural photographer and I'll give you the images. But you cannot give, sell, or share those images with anybody whatsoever. Have them sign, great. Okay, and tell them, I'm shooting this and my intent is to try and sell them to the architect. You get them for free, but that's it. And that's the exchange for getting me access to the type of architecture that I want to shoot. So when you go and do that, then you get a great project for your portfolio. You have one potential client in the builder who might come back to you and say, these were great. We're willing to pay for the next one. That's not a bad situation. And pick the place that you want to shoot that is like, geez, this home is amazing. It would, when they're done, I want to get in there and shoot that. There'll be a site sign if it's of any, amount of value. There'll be a site sign that'll have the builder or the architect or somewhere on there. Yeah. Contact them and say, hey, I would like to shoot this. When's it going to be done? If you get me in there for free, blah, blah, blah. And then, make sure you cross all your T's, dot your I's, that they're not going to be giving those images to anyone or passing them along to any publication. It has to be locked down. And then you control the distribution of those images to architect, electrician, plumber, sub-development guy, whatever. Anyone who was involved in that project, you have to make sure that in your contract, don't make it too big, but make it like one page. But you have the ability to resell the images to anyone involved in that project. So no one's going to get upset. And you have to be clear that you have the ability to do it from the client or the owner of the home, that they're not going to be like, hey, I hate the architect and I don't want him having images. Then you're getting into a situation where the value of those images has gone from resale to just portfolio, right?
Okay,
so, but that trick of finding builders that will get you access to projects that have been finished is a good one, because it benefits everyone. Your potential clients, on the low end are real estate agents. Next one will be builders. Next one up from that would probably be interior designers, landscape designers, landscape architects, and then architects. And as far as payment-wise, a little lower in there would be publications. So if you can go around to publications and get them to use you, that's the thing that'll then also open up the door to a lot of architectural firms. Now, where you're at currently with your post-production, I don't think the publications would, on the interior publications, they're not going to be on board with where you're at currently with the post-production and lighting. So once you get that in line, and like I'd say I'd give you an assignment. I'd be like, go out, drive around, find a high-end home that you think could end up in a magazine, approach the builder, get in there and shoot it like we've talked about with composition and lighting and post-production, and get yourself a really good set of like 8 images to, well, at least exterior, entry, kitchen, bathroom, master bedroom, master bath, living room, dining, cover the major things and then details. Have enough to be able to pitch to a publication an already photographed project. So you have to find one that looks great, find one that has the interiors that are good, because if interiors sell magazines, the interior condition of a home is massive for getting anything into publications. So if there's you could pitch that same idea to probably interior designers to say, hey, if you get me in there, I'll give you the images, but you cannot give, sell, or share to anyone. And then from the interior designer, you could have the builder or the architect as well. The architects are ready and willing to pay for the images. The cost isn't the issue. The issue usually with architects is this person, do they have enough of a track record to show that they'll knock this out of the park and have publications use them? So if you're creating a strategy or a stratification of who to approach to expand your career, kind of associate it in that way. Know that the lowest rung is real estate agents and the lowest paying. And then, builder, interior designer, landscape installer, publications, and then architects. So that trajectory is what you want to get to the point where all of your shoots are more so full price from full paying clients. A lot of my work starting out for the first 5 to 10 years was for like 1/8 payment through a publication. So they'll say like, you go shoot this, we'll pay you $850. Well, you go and shoot it, and then you find out that the architect's already shot it with someone else, so you can't resell the images and blah, 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 and you don't get paid that much. But your name gets in a publication, and the work that you shot is in a publication. Architects see it, see your name, and then potentially call you. So getting in with publications, I know they're a thing that's like kind of going away, but currently it's still something that architects look at and wouldn't mind being in. So
do you approach publications with, here's a job that I thought was really cool and here's some cool photos? Or do you say, are you looking for dusk exteriors right now? Or do you have a writer that is writing a story on home offices and then say, hook up with that writer and then do the shot, then find a place? Or how does that, do you tend to show up with photos in hand or no?
Multiple different ways you can do it and different reasons why you do it that way. So they wouldn't hook you up with a writer doing something unless they've already seen something you've shot and like it. So I would say, looking where your post-production and lighting is currently, I would go and shoot something, and I would email whatever publication you think it would go in and say, hey, we've shot something that we think would go well in your publication. If you'd like us to send over a PDF, let us know. And then I have the architect put together a single paragraph that tells the story of the project, just the taste of it as a paragraph, and then put a PDF of images with it, composed nicely, laid out, and send that along. And usually that's enough to get the publication to bite if it's shot well and it's a good piece of architecture. You need to know what kind of projects are typically in certain types of publications, or know at least this publication will usually run like a really traditional project and a really like modern project. So if you have like one of those, say, hey, I've shot this and I thought it might work well for this article that you guys typically run. If you'd like to see it, let me know. And then that's when you send over the PDF that the architect put together and everything as well. Doing it that way is one approach. The next approach is to get your best work together in a printed portfolio. They will usually pretty easily take a meeting if your website looks interesting. And, the thing I always felt that was weird is like, why am I going there with a printed portfolio when they can just look at it online? But I think for normal people, there's something about relationship building and all of that, and they just want to get an idea of the person they're working with, that they can trust them and whatnot, probably. I'd imagine that's why you'd still go in. I'm lucky enough to be able to do that stuff off of reputation now. And I really hated putting in that time, but there's no other way. At that time, there was no other way to get here. So, did that answer most of the question?
I think so. Yeah. Typically, at this point in your career, do people, I imagine the publications approach you, but early on you had to just keep plugging away. Like, that's another question I've had is at what point do I become a nuisance? If I check in with you once a month about getting published or working together or whatever it is that enough? Or does that not keep me top of mind? Or is every week too much and they're just annoyed by you? Or like, I haven't found that balance of, I don't want to be annoying because I feel like it,
right.
But I also understand that I need to not always take no for an answer, but I have a hard time not taking it. If someone says no, like we already have somebody that, or we're good right now, do I keep that up or keep saying, well, how about now? What about now?
Right.
And when does that become, okay, this guy's tenacious and I should give him a shot, or this guy's annoying, I'm going to block his number?
Well, I've done both. There was this guy in Kennebunk, I'll just leave him nameless, and it got to the point where I didn't care anymore. And I think the way he ran his business was just really out of the top of his head. And he kept, I think the situation was like, yeah, get back to me next week and we'll blah, blah, blah. And I did, and then we didn't. I did, and then we didn't. So I just put it on my to-do list, like every Tuesday and Thursday, for like months, I'd send him stuff. I never ended up working for him, I don't think. So don't do that. Just, kindly realize that, like, all right, I made my shot and, it didn't land well. But let's say you get new work that changes potentially their opinion of you. Like, here's some new work, just so you know. You might want to develop some kind of email system that goes out, once a month or once every other month to show recent work. And so if you can have like a recent work thing on there, if you're someone that they're not following on Instagram or anything else, if you can somehow get recent work consistently in front of them that looks good, and that you show that you want to do this kind of thing, they're looking for talented people to do that. So I would say work at getting the work up to publication quality and levels. And then once you're there, maybe look at starting to send postcards, to a select few clients every, whatever ends up being the right time frame. I would say we used to send out postcards like every 2 months, I think. And we'd just put something on the front, like one big. The temptation is to put a bunch of work on there, but that just looks busy. We'd put one big image that was great on the front, and then like a band of images across the back of the postcard, or just an additional single image. And then we'd mail that out to a lot of potential clients and do it that way. But yeah, with publications, I would say try and get a meeting in person. I'd also say before you put together a portfolio, run it past me, and I'll be real honest with you.
Sweet,
And that'll help. That'll help it get into more publication type of compositions and imagery, like the one with the living room and the stair. If you were to send that to a publication, they'd never call you back. So you really want to get, yeah, it's
That's
more real
like,
estate. Yeah,
a
it's
hint
just
of it-
it's a
a
real
hint of
estate shot.
Okay. I think that's
to-
maybe that's. I think if
go
I can
ahead.
bring this back, sorry, to circle back with something. I'm going to show you real quick the shots from what you call it. There it is from Derek Bloom, or the shot. It's in Marblehead.
Oh, cool.
I shot it in 2015,
right.
Marblehead, Massachusetts. So this shot is too much. Like, you would not have provided this shot because it's too much, right? I was trying to show the fireplace on the right, the staircase on the left. I was trying to show how everything fit together. And this is not a shot you would ever take because it's just too much information. Is that correct?
Watch, I probably take the exact same shot. I'm gonna have to eat my words.
Oops, that's the edited one. Yeah, there's a shot with a person in there, person not. I just like, and I did try to do some kind of detail kind of shots where it's just, that's a terrible shot. But yeah, just kind of like, this is the space. This was also 10 years ago now, so my skills are a little bit different at this point, or compositional skills at least. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's too much information perhaps. And you would probably just zoom in on the house and just focus on the living space, not as much as the nature surrounding it. I tried to focus on relationships, right? I tried to focus on the spaces, how it relates to everything else. Like, this was way too much driveway perhaps, but I also wanted to show the flowers. I thought it was a nice breakup of the gray space in the foreground. And it wasn't
That top
I didn't
right
want to,
image.
What's that?
If you go back, the top right image is a
This
little
one?
more like vignette-y.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying. There's a trail, a nature trail, right to the left there, or to the bottom right there. That's why I tried to include that a little bit. Maybe it's just stretching it too much.
Yeah,
but-
see, for that image, I would more so crop in on the house. What you've done is you stretch two valuable things apart in trying to show the relationship.
Okay, so this is a little bit more what you're talking about. Maybe zoom in a little bit more.
bit more, yeah.
I'm trying to. Okay. Okay. Interesting. We shot the same space. Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's a good point to wrap it up. I've taken a lot of your time already. I mean, I've got many more questions still, but I think we've covered a lot so far. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you again. I do need to eat, but I'm excited for you and want to see you succeed. Now I'm invested. So
Awesome. Thanks. And it was really helpful to. I mean, I kind of. It's not that I prided myself on not having using artificial light, because I know how to use it and I feel comfortable with it, especially shooting products. I enjoy crafting the light.
Oh yeah.
But
If you can keep the color temperature consistent, it's not an issue. But then you do get into really high contrast areas where you lose quality pretty severely. So it's
okay. Yeah, I hear you. Excellent. Well, I want to check out your interiors. This space that you shot that we both shot. That's too funny. I wonder if his is. I wonder if his site has your photos up on there. I imagine it does. But anyway, I'm trying to. I wanted to wait for this interiors to load, and so I was trying to stall there for a minute. But I think it's going to take too much time. Because this was the shot I was talking about before. You would not provide that shot because that's too much information, and you just did the kitchen area here, right in the middle.
Oh, I'm sure I probably covered something like that. I probably would have cropped in on the right.
Yeah.
About
fireplace.
Well, you see that door to the right of center in the image?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The next pane over on the other side of the column that's holding up the yellow beam, I probably would have cut that somewhere in there and probably
okay.
cut about half of the table off. And then you'd be focused in, because right now you have this huge expanse of white negative space up in the top right. That negative space can be really effective if it's pushing your attention towards something or pulling it towards something. But in here, it just feels like it's just there, you know?
Yeah.
See there, I probably would have gone more vertical and cut both the pieces of art through there. And then you would have had this nice, like, walls, window, table.
Nice. So do you do a lot of, is it mainly horizontal, mainly vertical, or do you do a good mix of both? And I know that's another question I'm taking. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
No, don't worry about it. It's not,
not
an issue.
I got to say, this has been the highlight of my past several months with you, because you've been someone whose opinion I really value. So I appreciate the criticism. I appreciate the honesty. It's tough to hear sometimes, but like you said, I need to grow, and I'm eager to grow, and I'm eager to be more recognized in the industry as someone who's of a higher level. So the wider angle is taking away from it seems, and
sometimes it's appropriate. Sometimes it's absolutely appropriate, but I would see like that one you have with the branch on the left there. Yeah, kind of like that, but still very, very wide.
Yeah, that's too much. I think there's too much yellow on the wall. If I just cut in, take the ceiling off and take the left side off.
The other thing you need to keep in mind is that with a wide angle lens, as stuff gets towards the edge of frame, it gets like it's being pulled into a black hole. You know, it gets stretched. And that distortion, that stretch in that way, I really, really try and avoid that unless it's something where there's like a repetition in the ceiling that adds like a graphic element. Like if this was like bop, 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 and it all like was pointing towards like some subject over here or something, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. This isn't just
all right, so what are your actionable steps? Just to reinforce here.
Play with flashes. Play more, obviously. I'm having a hard time with that step, because how do I find a cool property that would be good to play with?
Well, the plane first. Just do it in your own apartment, house, whatever. It doesn't need to be anything portfolio. The very first plane, just get that thing from B&H, get home, shoot it how you'd normally shoot it, and then add the light in the way that we are talking, and then see what you can do in post. And then send me the results. And send me the results how you'd normally do it and how you're doing it now.
Okay.
Because that would be, I'd enjoy seeing that, the difference in that. And I'm sure you're going to mess it up because this is the first time you're doing it. And that's fine. But it's in the trying that then I can see it and say, here, what you did wrong was this, do that, don't do this. And then I'm sure Tim probably would have some things to chime in on the post-production side of it as well. So,
yeah. Other actionable steps, which really scares me, is the walking in to someone's. I mean, I like the idea of emailing someone saying, "Hey, can I stop in to show you my portfolio?" That feels a little bit softer than just knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, I'm this guy. Here's my stuff. Take a look."
So take your double fist bump guns. And...
Exactly. Check it out. I'm for hire.
Best thing. Yeah. So you're not a salesman either, huh?
I'm not. I mean, I can talk about photography all day and talk about why I do these things, and I've had a few clients who are standing there next to me and who really appreciate the experience of working with me because of how excited I get about a good photo and how excited and why. Like, that's the other thing. They say, well, I really want a shot from this angle. And I say, okay, I'll take it from your angle, I'll take it from my angle, and I'll show you why I like mine better. And I'm happy to, now that I have both, I'm happy to provide either one you want. But this is why I made these choices. And I think it helps educate them and also shows my experience and my skill level so that they can appreciate me on a higher level, perhaps. But anyway,
the only critique I would put there is that if you fully shot both of them, you wasted your time. You want to just take one snapshot, one snapshot, compare them, and then
no, I do it on the iPad.
You want to focus all that time on the one that's the best. So,
yeah, I do it. Like you do with the iPad. I would shoot it with the iPad. Shoot it do a quick snapshot. Do mine and theirs next to each other. I'm not going to fully edit. I'm not going to fully prepare each of these images. I want to do it on site and say this is why. But that's it.
All right,
So
let me see if I can go over your actionable steps really quick, just because I'm so not a teacher, but if I'm going to be doing this more, I need to be better. So, starting to play with lighting. Once you've got to a point where you feel you can play with it consistently, then introduce it to your workflow. Until you're confident to at least add it into your workflow, be very careful to not, if you have a client that you've had for a long time and they're comfortable with saying like, yeah, no, I'll leave and you can just finish up here. Great. Okay. And you're doing it that way, then it's not an issue. But be careful with how much experimentation you do at a job when there's time constraints. But play with lighting and then work on lighting. Your post-production, make sure you don't over-whiten. Don't do the over-whitened Los Angeles trophy wife teeth.
Less saturation.
Then your compositions need to move towards architectural photography rather than more expository. So you want to start not eliminating your wide angle. You need to know when to use the wide angle. You want to develop your tighter compositions. So you want to get to where you're just simply comfortable doing tighter compositions, because it is the compositions that the higher paying clients will gravitate towards. They'll be more refined and restrained in their spending of money and blah, blah, blah in that sense. Yeah. And then after that, I would say start approaching builders and set yourself like a goal of 4 projects. Do 4 really nice high-end projects that you do for free for builders, and then start to, and if you think about it, hit me up and I can send you my kind of estimate sheet that I do. You might have one completely better than what I use, but maybe you don't.
Got it.
In this case, it'll give you an idea of a contract that you could put in front of someone that will have them in a summary be able to take you seriously. And anytime I do something for less than I would typically do it, I charge the people the amount I would typically charge, and then I put in a discount. So they see it. They know what they're going to be paying if they come back. Don't undo that. You can never go backwards. So, but I would pick out 4 projects that you think are really worth it and potentially able to be published. And if you're wondering, hey, just take a picture with your phone and send it to me if you think, hey, I don't know if this is publishable or not. I'll send it to Trent real quick. Just text me. I'll text you back if I'm not in the middle of something and say, dude, if you can shoot that and you shoot it well, you might get that published, or don't bother. So, quick, easy, don't worry about it. You're not going to bother me. I just won't respond if I don't have the time. So don't be hurt either. The thing after that, finding some builders that you could get those images from. If those projects haven't been photographed, they will not have been published. So if you can get those 4 projects, then after you finish them, you potentially have 4 architects to sell those images to. Maybe it's not that much. Maybe you only get a little bit of money back. Maybe this is a huge waste of time. It's life. It's what we got to do. Right. So potentially you have the resale with architects, and then potentially you also have the ability to get them published. And potentially maybe there's an interior designer involved, and maybe there's a developer or something too. So if you can get those little ones where you get the in, and then potentially you can use that to grow both your portfolio, and you'll grow your potential client base, and you'll grow name recognition within all of those people that you interact with. So every publisher or editor, architect, interior designer, whatever, that you approach through these 4 projects, those are initial points of contact where you have something that they potentially might value, and your professional interaction with them, your pleasantness, your efficiency, all of that weighs into how they're going to remember you And when they have a potential job, remember that guy? Yeah, let's try it. Okay. And they'll give you a throwaway project. And that's your foot in the door. And if you knock that out of the park, then you're on your way. So
Sweet. Cool. Well, I really appreciate this, Trent. Thank you so much for your time. You spent almost 3 hours with me, so I appreciate it. I understand how busy you are, so thank you.
this has made me feel better. So I like it.
Good. I appreciate you giving back. It's really helpful.
Running into someone that's excited to see you is always fun. So
And I got to say, it's weird to start over. I'm basically starting over my career, starting my career new at I'm going to be 49 in 4 days.
Ooh,
So
yeah, buddy.
it's weird to like do this, and it's nice to have someone that's there that is helping me along a little bit at least. So thanks.
Yeah.
I felt like my skill level was good, but I'm learning that after our conversation, I'm not as good as I thought I was. So it hurts a little bit, but yeah.
Hurt
Anyway.
is good.
Yeah.
Put it where it's appropriate. You have all of the talent to get to where you want to be. You have all of the talent. It's just a matter of identifying what you don't like and what you do like, and aligning that with the value that customers will find in you. That's all.
Okay.
So just keep identifying those things, study other people's work that are successful and where you're aiming at, and just make sure you can pick up on those things and start to study, why does mine look this way when I want it to look this way? And at this point, you might even be at the point where you're, training what you want to see. When you first get into some things, you don't even know what you want. You just know you enjoy the process. And it's in like, oh, I enjoy the process, but the results, the people that I'm aiming at, it's not that you're just working as an artist expressing singularly what you need. You also have to take your talent and manipulate it a bit towards what your client needs, which is why commercial artistry, like what we do, can be a very emotionally draining thing, because you're pulling from an emotional place to do this very artistic process that then you manipulate kind of away from what you would do towards what other people are looking for. It's that weird balance of, it's commercialized. So you have to not singularly do exactly what you are experiencing and expressing. You have to tailor it. So this is just the tailoring process. So reaching out to me, someone who's had more experience in this realm, that's a great move to pass down to you. Like, all right, here's what people are going to be looking for. Learn to correctly identify and jump these hurdles, and then you're going to move ahead. It's just a grind forward. So
the very, very, very last question, quick thing is, you mentioned earlier about just shooting dispensaries. I've been wanting to focus on like one thing, either dispensaries or tiny homes or log cabins or that type of thing. Like or sustainable, like more sustainable materials, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Is that beneficial to you? Like, I'm not sure that you specialize in any kind of, like I've seen you do that. I can't remember the name of the places, but you did some universities, you've done homes, you've done a variety of different work. Yeah. That's work for you. How?
Yeah, the only specialization that I've really allowed myself to do is architecture. So capturing the built environment, even further specialization, the next level of specialization really is into residential or commercial or interior or exterior. That's the interior and exterior really I've found to be mostly the differentiation. I've found that people use me more so for interiors than exteriors when it comes to commercial work. I wouldn't mind getting more of those exterior commercial jobs because they're far easier, but they're a different animal when you're dealing with the architectural firms that do the massive skyscrapers. It's a very different thing that I just haven't had a lot of experience with yet. Most of my commercial jobs are probably 80% on just like built out interior spaces and not as much the overall building. The commercial architectural realm, like one architect will design the the overall massive building. And then each floor after the lobby is just blank. And then another architect comes in and designs out each space for the client that fills that space. So it's a little weird that way. But getting as far as differentiating into business type within architecture, not typically a thing that I've run into, but just showing and being within the circles of dispensaries, I don't think that's a bad outlet for you at all. Just I would say I would pull away from the overly saturated, overly energetic, overly intense nature that a lot of the dispensaries can kind of lean towards with the green lights and the red lights and that kind of stuff. Try and refine it a little bit more. Because even the architects that have their name on these cannabis dispensaries have in the back of their head, like, well, am I going to be associated with only doing weed now? Or, so if you can make it read like it's a restrained, upstanding, refined, austere, kind of stiff a little bit more, it is not the end of the world. It kind of puts it in a little bit more contained box, which people who are uncomfortable, if you're putting it in a box, it makes them a little bit more comfortable. And to aesthetically restrain it a bit more can be a strategic, philosophical approach to handling that type of work.
Okay. Is this like, so when I tend to do, sorry, real quick, when I tend to do interiors, I tend to want to have a lot of leading lines and a lot of stuff like that. Is that
right?
Too
the
much in your
leading
face?
lines and all that. That's the wide angle beauty. Go back to the very top there.
I was going to show you one that's like, what is that? This is what you're talking about?
Say the top right one there. All your negative space and everything there does something that leading you towards that singular blue center, right?
It was this was a interior. This was a hangar. Actually, I did a time lapse where he was shutting the hangar door.
Oh, cool.
But this was they just wanted to show off their hangar space. These aren't amazing images. They just wanted to show off the space for rental. I will take the watermark off. Sorry about that. But yeah, there's a lot of leading lines. But
Patrick, now.
Sorry. But what I was going to say, the one I was going to show you earlier was this one real quick. The interior examples. Come on, back.
I like that green outside too on that one. That's pretty cool.
On the hangar. This was look at this. This was a perfect day. The storm was coming in, and yes, this was all under construction. That's why there's some equipment and stuff, and the parking lot looks terrible. But man, the skies were just killer. I was really happy with this shoot.
Now, the thing I would say with skies is that whenever you see a good sky, just photograph it and then put it in a folder.
I've got a whole
and then
folder.
You can just,
I do have those.
Yeah, and then you just bring those back in whenever you want them, because it's super easy to just cut out the sky and put in whatever sky you want, as long as it blends with the existing lighting condition.
Yeah. This was what I was talking about. So wider angle is going to lead to
that is a great use of a wide angle lens. I would crop a little off the top, and I would want to shoot it so that light isn't completely blown out. But that is now I would have come up a little bit higher so you could actually see the counter level, or just a tiny bit higher. And the black like COVID dividers or whatever that is on the left are a little distracting, but yeah,
that's the lobby area.
88.
I don't know. I like what I do, and I'm enjoying what I do. This is another dispensary. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's hard to like.
Dude,
now.
Dispensaries are beautiful spaces. So
yeah, I've been wanting to do that's the big fantasy is to end up near Portland, near Maine, because I've never been a fan of Massachusetts. Being from Ohio, this is not my favorite place to be, and Maine is a better place to be. So
I would agree.
Yeah, I've heard you say many times, and I totally agree with you.
Ooh.
But it's
See,
like
now that with a tilt shift, go back one.
back one. This one.
Yeah.
That one.
One more. That's not. There we go. That like. Ooh, that's really cool too. But
like
with
the
all those
interiors.
pipes and stuff, like if you
Yeah.
had shifted, if you had a tilt shift and done the bottom and shifted up and done the top, you'd have this big
Yeah.
square, massively wide angle that
Oh,
can
yeah, I
be
didn't
super
think about
fun.
Nice.
That I use the tilt shift for that a lot, and it makes it super easy in post. You just align them. You don't have to
Yeah.
skew them to be able to fit together.
Right.
But
Cool. All right. So less wide angle. That's much, which makes it more real estate. Play with lights. So yeah. Okay. I'll keep working. Thanks, Trent. I appreciate it.
cool. And send me a follow-up email if I need a second assistant or anything sometime. I'll hit you up, and that would be a good way for you to just kind
would
of see the
love that.
thought process of how to compose and all that too.
And to see
So,
how your day goes too, just the flow of your day, because like I said, I'm doing 40, 60 images in a half day or full day. So
Yeah.
I'd like to see what 8 images looks like or 4 images looks like for you. That's
it looks
that's
tedious.
the level
is
I
what
wanna
it
be
looks
at.
like.
and I don't mind being tedious if it's the right image. That's the other thing is I second guess myself all the time. Like, is this better or is that better? I'll take both.
Yeah.
Wait, or is this better or are these 10 others better? I'll take
Yeah.
both. Like this is a great example.
These are
This
nice
is-
right
this is
here.
just-
So
Thanks.
that, and then the next one, really, this is whoever designed this had good control of color and
Yeah.
stuff. But like this
the
one, if you crop in just around the subject in the middle, that's really nice. And if you put, like just a little bit further back than that, where you catch that beam
Yeah.
going across the top, and
I like the skylights in here. That's why I did this shot. I wanted
Yeah.
to show the sky, these lights up on top. And like you said before, you don't want to show too much of the outside. Here I showed the trees more, but I let this blow out on the left.
yeah,
Because I didn't care about the rest of the house. So
That's
I want to bring
an
in outside
appropriate
when
level
I
of
can.
outside. Yeah.
Thanks. And that's I don't ever want it to look HDR like real estate, but I do
See
want to show
here
that you're like
again. That's
in the
a
trees.
decent use of wide-angle lens. I would have just shifted it up a little bit more to catch that corner that's
Just
cut
the corner.
off up
Yeah.
there.
That
Yeah,
drives me
but
crazy. I
that-
wish I did.
If you had that and then you had just a barely not blurred, but just barely motion blurred person walking into the kitchen, you'd activate the
Yeah.
whole thing and make it feel alive, which is
Do you use
That's
people
cool.
all the time?
only when the
I
architects
tend-
ask me to,
Okay.
and most of them do.
Awesome. All right, I'm stopping now. I'm almost out of
All right.
battery anyway. So thanks, Trent.
All right, Patrick, stay in touch and
will.
send me your progress. I'd love to see how it goes.
I will.